Welcome, everyone, to a special episode right here on Pixels, Plastic, and Ink. It is the top 5 scenes of all time in comic book film industry. We debate. Stay tuned. This is Pixels, Plastic, and Ink. Well, thank you for tuning in for this special episode, the top 5 comic book film scenes of all time. Please subscribe, like. This is the Shadow Nose Network, and this is PPI. So, gentlemen, let's get right into it. I thought we would just throw out some of our top scenes, and then I think we could have a little bit of an argument, a little bit of combat, vocal combat, and get down to the top 5. And look, we want to hear your thoughts too. So if you're listening, if you're tuning in, drop your thoughts in the comments, because I'm sure you all feel either the same or you feel differently. So let's do it. Who wants to go first?
I'll let Chet go first tonight.
Chet, what do you got? What do you got? What's one of your faves, man? Scenes of all time in comic book film history.
Oh man. Okay.
Chet's definitely come prepared tonight. Just want to let you know. You can see
this. So well, okay. It's difficult because I do have a few that I really like, but I will tell you probably one of the most anticipated scenes in comic book history that I didn't think was going to go over well just because of all the things you heard about the makeup and like who was playing this person. But the reveal of Thanos was epic. When it was just the end of the cutscene, and then he's just sitting there and they're talking, and it's just like they made it feel like bigger than life, and it's what everyone from jump of watching Iron Man 1 all the way through to that, everyone was like, at some point, right, like Thanos is showing up. And there was, if you remember, there was rumors about who was doing it and all this other, and it was like back and forth, and it's like, I don't know, I think it was good. I think it was a good reveal. I think it was just enough to get you to go watch it again. And those were the fun days of Marvel where you would sit and wait for like mid-credit scenes and then end-credit scenes, and then like it was cool. It was cool to see that. I think that was a a very important scene.
That was at the end of Avengers: Age of Ultron, right? Right, kicked into Infinity War. I think so.
I think it was.
Right?
Yeah, I think it was in Ultron. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
No.
Was it the first? It was the first.
The first Avengers.
Was it the first one?
Because it was.
That's
he didn't say anything.
It was the first one. Yeah, it was just
like,
what
he's going to be courting death, and he smiled.
Yes. Yep.
All right,
that's a good one. That's a good one.
I'll go next. I was sitting in the theater for it too. The first showing of Planet Krypton from Superman the movie. It's got one of the best scores of all time. You see that ice planet come up, and you're sitting in the theater. You feel the weight of, like, because any comic book fan knows what's going to happen eventually to Krypton. But it's like the John Williams score is fantastic. It's just every time I see that, I always think of that that same scene, that same sound, no matter whatever Superman film's in. So that for me is one of the most iconic films, moments in superhero films, man.
That's a good one. I like one of the most memorable, if we talk about the beginning of the MCU, is Mr. Tony Stark in the cave building Iron Man Mark 1 and coming out and destroying people. That was so epic to see that on the big screen, to come out in the tin can suit, and then the evolution, obviously, of all the suits. But that was pretty epic to see the first Iron Man suit in cinematic history, not considering all the other attempts previously. So that definitely stands out to me.
I'll go way back to the beginning of the MCU, which is Blade. That first scene at the bloodbath is one of the best opening scenes of any movie, much less a comic book movie.
That was a good one. The music, do the rave, yes, hell yeah, that's a good one. To talk about an opening of a film, let's be The Dark Knight and the bank robbery.
Dude, okay, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that because that was like
that's more of a scene though. That's like an extended, but like it continuous scene, like epic.
But okay, but the reason why it was so good was because like if you went and saw it on IMAX, which my favorite IMAX theater is Irvine Spectrum, like that IMAX theater is just like a wall. But when you saw it, that opening scene, it was like it opened up, and then when you saw the top of the building, then it just expanded onto the screen, and there was so many firsts for that, and that opening was like, man, everyone's killing everyone who's killing everyone, and then when he says like, no, I killed the bus driver, it was just like, oh.
Yeah, I remember we saw that one. Dr. Brenton and I saw that at the Universal City Walk, and I remember we first saw it when we had to go watch I Am Legend in order to see that scene because they were teasing it. So I remember we were, not really going for I Am Legend. We were going to see the opening to The Dark Knight, and we sat through I Am Legend, which wasn't that bad of a film and everything. But on the Batman court, I'll keep it up and everything. 1989, Michael Keaton's first reveal, when he basically grabs the criminal, holds him over the side of the building, and says, "I am Batman." It was the film that I think started that entire craze of comic book films. That summer was wild, and I think we've never looked back from that.
Yeah, sticking with Batman, I'm going to do two scenes, and I think that these are really hard to beat. And they're both in Dark Knight. First scene, when Joker walks in and everyone's like talking crap on him, and he's like, "Let me show you a magic trick," and he jams a pencil on the table and then shoves the guy's head on the pencil, and like the guy falls over. Scene was unreal. Like that's one of my all-time favorite scenes. And my second scene, because like early on I found out it was 1,000% improvised by Heath Ledger, was when he was sitting in the cell in the middle of the precinct, and then he just starts laughing and clapping. That whole scene he made up. It wasn't like written. So it was like, that was the epitome, I think, of like Heath Ledger's Joker. It was like, this dude is nuts. The pencil one was great.
There's so many epic scenes in The Dark Knight. You could pull so many from there.
I was gonna say, I was gonna go with capturing the Joker and then capturing the banker as well in Hong Kong. Those are both great scenes.
Yeah, 100%. I think one that stands out to me in the first Avengers is the first time we see them all together as the camera pans and does the circular shot when they're in the middle of the city and you see them for the first time lined up. That scene is epic. It's the first time ever we get to see all the Avengers in one spot and the music is playing. I mean, it was years in the making and we finally got to see the Avengers on screen. So that definitely stands out. And then speaking of Avengers, I mean, this is an obvious one, but the Endgame final battle, I mean, enough said. Yeah, enough said. I mean, if you want goosebumps, go on YouTube and search crowd reactions of that scene. I mean, people were just out of their damn minds. And I remember watching that and people losing their damn mind. And I saw it again in the theater a couple days later, and people were losing their damn mind. Like it's just epic. So those are two right out of the Avengers movies.
I'll keep it right there in the MCU. Captain America: Civil War, when Spider-Man appears. I remember people were jumping up and down because we knew it was going to come, but to see Tom Holland as the character was just amazing. You're like, wow, they really nailed that version compared to, the Tobey Maguires and the Andrew Garfields. It was completely different. It looked like it was its own styling and everything. And I think for the first time, he really did seem like he was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
And talk about a crazy audience reaction in Spider-Man No Way Home when the three Spider-Men jump off and start going. Oh man, you couldn't hear anything for a minute or two.
Yeah, that was crazy too.
Yeah, I know this movie doesn't get a lot of love, but it should. The Incredible Hulk, when they do its
poodle fight.
They're just no, not that Pluto one, but I'm thinking when he's when you see some of the first transformations in CGI, you're like, wow, that actually did work. And that was always one where, before then we only really had to see like Lou Ferrigno and he ducked behind the trash can the next thing you know. So that was early CGI, but it did work. The movie wasn't great, but it was an iconic moment to see the Hulk on the screen.
Or Stan Lee turning into the Hulk.
So two underrated sequences because they're not as big as some of the films we're talking about, but I just love how epic they were was the Nightcrawler scene where he's jumping through the walls and beating everyone up, and same Quicksilver in the other X-Men film. I think was that
Days of Future Past.
Yep, where he's also doing that in slow mo.
The same scene again.
Yeah. But those are epic because how it was shot and captured the character's special abilities so well. So those definitely stand out to me in fight sequences.
Yeah, I think in the realm of those, one of my favorite scenes from a movie that's, I don't know if it's really good, but from X-Men Apocalypse, what I did appreciate about that movie was Apocalypse coming in and being like, I can make you even stronger, like I did all this. And then he gets to Magneto, and then there's a scene where Magneto realizes like how strong he is, and Apocalypse tells him like, feel the metal in the earth, it's like all around. And then you just have this badass dude floating in the middle with everything you could think of like flowing around him. No one can touch him. And he turns on Apocalypse. It was intense because in the other movie you had Professor X like helping him with his powers, and then Apocalypse just comes in and is like, check this out. And it was like,
well,
it's like
in
right,
Apocalypse,
it's like,
I think a better scene is when Magneto loses his wife and child and goes crazy on that whole team of guys in the countryside.
Oh, that was intense.
Well, keep it with Magneto, X-Men First Class, when he basically ricochets the bullet back. There's certain moments, certain scenes that or like when they find him and he notices these gentlemen in the bar are like two ex-German soldiers and everything. It's like Michael Fassbender, as much as we love Ian McKellen and he did such a great job, Michael Fassbender really took that role to a completely different height, man.
Yeah. Nailed it.
What about Superman 2? When he tells the president to kneel before Zod, like it's pretty
That's so nuts.
But I know Dr. Brentley's favorite Superman 3 scene.
The only scene that's good in Superman 3 where he fights himself in the junkyard.
And he ends up losing to the tree. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
In Wonder Woman, the No Man's Land scene, That was a great bit. That first movie is so good. I don't know what the hell they did in that second one.
Yeah, they had the DCU had a problem with second movies. Same way too, Aquaman. You know, when the Black Manta's father is trapped and he begs him to like help him, he's like, you know, let him save himself and everything, and it sets up an epic point where you're going to see that villain later on. It's fantastic. You know, again, I'll take us back to 1989. The first time you see Jack Nicholson as the Joker. You're sitting in the theater like, wow, like it for the first time that character didn't look really cheesy on the screen. He looked very scary. So they did a great job with that film.
Yeah, that was crazy. It was yeah, he did a really good job. I keep trying to find, I remember when that movie first when it came out. It's at the end where he falls and then they walk over him and it's just like the laughing thing and they take it out like the ball. They actually made that as a toy. I've been trying to find it, but I really want that thing so bad.
You know,
what about in Dawn of Justice? We finally got to see Supes and Batman face off. I know that you know. We don't, the Snyderverse we're kind of like iffy about, but I think, hey, that was the first time we ever got to see it, and it was actually pretty cool scene.
Look, I think Man of Steel and you know, Superman versus Batman were two of his better forays in that. I think that, you know, if you see, don't go by the movie edition, you've got to see the director's cut of that, because there's so many contexts and points that not put in that you're sitting in theater like there's something missing in the plot points here. When you see the whole movie put together, they're all really put in there extremely well.
And who knew that, you know, besides Kryptonite, the name Martha is really
just
the thing that'll stop any superhero.
You've got to think, how many times have we heard it both times said, but you never really kind of put it into text with one another. Like both of their parents' mother's names were the same name. And I just really thought, as a comic fan, that would just, you know, but you don't really pay attention to that as it's going, you know. I'm also a big fan of The Rocketeer. I think that's probably one of the better faithful ones. But the first time you see him strap on that rocket pack and he has to fly and take care of the biplane, it's one of those movies. Look, it's one of the better films that's underappreciated with iconic scenes in it, and it's probably a very faithful to the comic edition before they were doing that with Sin City and some of those other films.
In Spider-Man 2, there's the train fight with Doc Ock.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That was really good.
And I think that's probably the best that Tobey Maguire was in those movies.
Yeah, I think Spider-Man 2 was his best film. You know, I liked Spider-Man 2 more than I liked Spider-Man 1. So, yeah, you're absolutely right on that. And I also think that, too, the first time in Spider-Man 1, when you do see William Dafoe's Green Goblin show up, and you're like, wow, they actually didn't make that look as cheesy as I thought it was going to be. It actually was intimidating, and it worked.
I mean, we said the end game fight scene, but that's such a long thing. But like within that, Cap wielding the hammer for the very first time was an epic scene. And then Tony Stark snapping his fingers and making the MCU go bye-bye. That was another one too. That was pretty epic. So I think those two things within that sequence will probably stand out.
There was also the scene where Vision walks over and picks up the hammer. that was a good scene.
Well, yeah. I think if we're going for top 5, I think we've got to at least put. Do we want to say the whole ending of Endgame, or do we want to like shrink it to a specific scene within that final battle? Or do we just say it's the whole damn thing? Because there's so many
damn things.
I got to think it's the whole damn thing. Man.
Okay, so we're gonna throw that in the top 5 easily. The whole from Portals all the way to the end game is in the top 5.
You can do the same with Infinity War and the Wakanda battle as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I put that in my top 5 though. I think it was good, but I think there's a bunch of other films
or just the snap part too.
Yeah,
because the snap is pretty epic.
Yeah,
I remember in theaters that was just like, wait a second, whoa, what's happening?
Especially if you didn't follow, like if you were just following the movies and you had no idea about comic books or backstories or whatever, you saw like, holy crap, like he made half of them die, and how sad it was like ended. I agree with you. That to me belongs in the top 5. That was such an iconic ending and cliffhanger. Probably one of the best cliffhangers of all time, where people were like, is this really happening? How are they going to bring him back? I would put that in the top 5. I don't know, Chet, Alex, if you feel differently.
I would, yeah.
I would, but specifically, what stands out to me about the most about that whole thing, scene wise, is, you know, for years we've had this idea of like Tony Stark, like, only gives a shit about himself as long as it makes him look good or whatever. But when the snap happens and like Spider-Man comes over and Tony Stark is like holding him and they're having the conversation and then Spider-Man disappears, was like, that was just like a whole nother side of like Tony Stark that we hadn't seen. And it was like, oh shit, like this guy's really attached to this kid as like Spider-Man. And it kind of makes you feel like the whole purpose for him even agreeing to do it was to get that kid back, you know? So it was pretty impactful, but I think that whole thing is just crazy how they did that. Like I was curious how they were going to do that. And I think they did a really, really good job of bringing that to the screen. Absolutely did.
So I think we've got the 2 of the 5. We get to define what are the 3 others in our top 5.
Again, I'm going to say the introduction of Michael Keaton as Batman. Yeah. It's probably one of the most impactful openings of any kind of comic book related film, because it is. Without that film and the mega success it has, I don't think you have any of this stuff going today.
I mean, I'm with you on that, because that is the scene that I remember getting slapped in the mouth by my dad because I repeated what he said. It's like, Jesus Christ, my dad's like, nope. But I love that movie a lot. Michael Keaton's best Batman.
Mr.
I think that scene has to be there.
Yeah.
300, the Immortals fight.
That is an iconic scene.
That's a good one. This is Sparta. I mean, how many clips has that been shown?
And it's the only time that Gerard Butler's ever going to make any kind of top 5 list.
That's true.
Top 5. Where are they now?
Would you? Would we consider Matrix?
No, not as a comic book, because it didn't actually have a comic until after the movie was out. Yeah. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna throw the pencil scene with the Joker in, if anyone wants to debate that. I think it's a great scene. Maybe it's not a top 5, but I think it's
I think it's really good. It's just the hard part is there's so many epic pieces of the Dark Knight, like, you know, when he's invades the party and he's having the let's put a smile on that face of yours, like, right, or you know, the scene, as you said, in prison, or his encounter with Batman with the bike and the, you know, all those things. So it's just like a hard, you know, and then we just talked about the bank robbery scene, and like the first image you saw of the Joker as he unveils his mask and he's got the grenade. So I agree that's epic, but it's just so hard to pinpoint which one. I wish we could just say it's The Dark Knight, but it's not films, it's scenes. So I'm a little iffy on whether or not that makes it top 5, but it's definitely epic. One of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, you know, and I'm thinking about that as well on, you know, I think Zack Snyder kind of, you know, it's going to be tough for him to make the list, but if he can make the list, I've got to say the prison scene with Rorschach. It's every time I see that scene, it's the one part of the film where like, wow, like this guy is insane. And it's just perfect. It's like they took Dave Gibbons and Alan Moore's work and put it to the screen. So, you know,
or even the opening credits in Watchmen, just because that is a cool sequence.
Yeah. Ooh, this is tough.
Always comes down to it, doesn't it?
because I was gonna say the Superman Returns, when the airplane scene, when he catches it, it was like the one really good scene in that movie.
Yeah.
The film ended 2 careers that day. Or Man of Steel had some great scenes as well. I think the Metropolis scene, I think, is one of those things that just so gets undergone, because what we used to Superman doing wasn't anything like that film. But that was one hell of it. That end of that film ratchets it up. But I think the Metropolis scene is just like, wow, here's a guy that has to do something that we as film goers didn't think that he was going to ever do.
Yeah. Based on just the reaction in the theater, I think one of the top ones is the 3 Spider-Men.
It's pretty good.
So. I think so too, because that was one of those, like, you never thought that was going to happen. All 3 of them,
And they kept denying it up until the release date.
Yeah,
it's epic.
I mean, we've got, and speaking of Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy's death in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. We've got Tony Stark finds out that Cap betrayed him in what turned out to be an epic storyline in Civil War and beyond. That was pretty awesome, because that kind of started friction between like the 2 captains, if you will, of the Avengers. But I thought that was always a cool scene. This is going to be hard to narrow down the final 2. We've got,
I don't know,
Avengers Endgame final sequence. That's a done deal for sure. We've got the Batman, I'm Batman, right? And what was the third one that we said was up there? Oh, the snap.
The snap.
The snap in Infinity, the conclusion of Infinity War.
Which snap was it? Was it Thanos' snap or
no? It was
Stark's snap.
No, that would
Thanos's.
Be Thanos that makes half the population disappear.
All the heroes.
Yeah, and I've got to go with Dr. Brentley. I think the 3 Spider-Man shown on the screen, the 3 different multiverse, and I think that's really one of the few times the multiverse really did work out extremely well, and it actually made me want to revisit those characters again in another form. So if they did any kind of sequels to any of the other 2 films, I wouldn't be opposed to that, because they just really did an epic job of bringing all those characters back.
What about in Logan, Wolverine's sacrifice? Like, if you remember, like, dying, it's kind of like the same thing as like Tony Stark's death, like this epic character, kind of the final conclusion to Wolverine, although he's back. That could be one too. There's so many different really great scenes. We've got 4.
Better than that, I think, is the Wolverine versus the ninjas in the Wolverine scene.
Oh,
that's good.
That is good.
Definitely. Yep.
What about in Logan, where he shoots himself with the serum and screams in the woods and starts cutting everybody up?
That's good. I think now we're getting into like greatest fight sequences in comic book film history. If you go back on our channel on YouTube, Shadow Knows Network, the Shadow Knows podcast, which was the former title of this show, we've got tons of episodes, and we did do best fight scenes of all time in film history. So make sure you check that out. We got a lot of best scenes on the Shadow Knows Network for sure. So what are we saying? What's the last one? Are we saying 300? Are we saying Batman versus Superman? What are we saying?
Adam Webb.
No, I'm saying 300. Most definitely.
I'm going to say this is Sparta, slow motion, kick. Is got to be up there for me in the top 5.
Yeah.
What do you say, Dr. Brantley?
Sure.
Okay. So we have narrowed it down, the top 5 scenes, and it was tough, and I'm sure we missed it. So please comment if we missed it. I'm sure we did, but it is the entire Endgame at the end of the film sequences, full of different things: the hammer, the snap, all the cool things, the portals. Number 2, of course, the snap at the end of Infinity War. Half the population disappears. the first time we see Michael Keaton on Batman. Such an epic thing, and the first time we really saw the darker version of Batman. The epic of all three Spideys on screen for the first time. A bit of a multiverse, but it was really cool to see that all come together. And last but not least, this is Sparta from 300. That is your top 5 according to the Pixels, Plastics, and Ink cast. Gentlemen, any final words?
Yeah, we're gonna probably have to do another 30-minute special someday down the line on this stuff too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. Maybe track it, but I mean this is tough.
Yeah,
it's definitely tough. Well,
it's hanging tough.
Hanging tough. Well, that is it for us. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Pixels, Plastic, and Ink.